right hand, read aloud the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty
Would
God.
you remove your gloves, please? You cannot take the oath wearing gloves.
The case you're about to see is fictitious, but the procedure is authentic. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the general public. Today in the Crown Court, Mrs. Paula Carline is accused of malicious wounding.
You're Felicity Carline of 12 Silver Grove, Fulchester.
Yes.
And your occupation?
I'm a housewife. Except I'm divorced, but I suppose I'm a sort of housewife.
You have children to look after?
Yes, 2.
But you don't have a proper job?
No.
I can assure you, Mr. Crichton, that being a mother is much harder work than your so-called proper job.
Yes, Your Honour. We will take it that Mrs. Carline works at home. On the 17th of March, did you go out in the evening?
Yes.
Where did you go?
I went to the off-licence Van Ordinaires in Claremont Crescent.
And do you remember at about what time?
Yes, it must have been between 6:30 and 7, because I promised the boys I'd be home for This Is Your Life.
Sorry?
Mrs. Carline, could you repeat what you just said?
We always watched This Is Your Life.
That isn't what you actually said. What you said was, I promised the boys I would be home in time for This Is Your Life.
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Carline, if counsel cannot hear you, it is reasonable to assume that the jury cannot hear you either. Would you please try to speak up?
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Carline, why did you go to the Van Ordinaire?
To buy some champagne.
You were planning a celebration?
Yes. My eldest son, Joseph, had just got into public school, a music scholarship, and I wanted to celebrate.
And while you were buying this champagne, were you alone in the shop?
No, the woman that owned the shop was there, and a strange boy came in to buy some beer. I remember him because his hair was very odd. He asked me if some beer was better in a tin or a bottle. I don't drink beer.
Did anyone enter the shop while you were choosing your champagne?
Yes. Andrew's new wife came in.
Can you tell the court her name, Mrs. Carline?
Paula. Paula, she's married to him, so I suppose it's Carline.
So your former husband's wife came into the shop while you were there?
Yes.
Where does your former husband live?
3 Antimony Crescent.
And is this near you?
Yes, it's on the same estate.
And does Paula Carline live there with him?
Yes. It's her house. She owns it.
Do you and the accused occasionally bump into each other?
Well, not as often as you'd think. Gull Hill's a big estate.
But you had met on occasions previous to the one in the Van Ordinaire?
Yes.
Could you outline to the court these meetings on previous occasions?
Yes.
Your Honour, is this relevant to the case?
Mr. Crichton.
Animosities, Your Honour. Animosities can take a long time to build up and come to a head. I would seek to show the court this was the case.
I would accept that, Mr. Fletcher Reed.
As it pleases you, Your Honour.
Mrs. Carline, can you recall previous meetings with the accused?
Yes, I can.
Would you tell the court about them?
Oh, yes. Well, I first met her about 3 years ago, when she came with Andrew to take the boys out for some outing. This was before she was married to my former husband. I think it was my younger son Timothy's birthday treat. She was very quiet. She didn't say very much. I thought perhaps she was nervous at meeting the boys for the first time.
And what about meetings after this first one?
Well, I really never got to know her better than a quick cup of coffee whilst the boys were getting their things together. We talked about them mostly. They were really all we had in common. And Andrew, of course.
And did your acquaintance continue in this vein?
No.
Did something happen to change it?
Yes, she stopped coming with Andrew to collect the boys.
Does the children's father have regular access to them?
Oh, yes. He's supposed to have them every other weekend, but he sometimes has to work most weekends. But I like him to have the boys as often as possible, so he sees them during the week if he can. That is, if they don't have any homework or anything like that.
So you didn't see Paula Carline for some time after this, after she stopped coming to the house?
I saw her in the distance, but not to speak to, no.
Were you avoiding her during this period?
Not at all. I had no reason to avoid her, but we had very little in common. There was no particular reason for us to meet.
So when did you and Paula Carline renew your acquaintance?
She started sending me coupons.
Coupons, Mrs.
Yes.
Carline.
Coupons, you know, cut from magazines, money off this and that.
Do you know why she started to save these coupons for you?
No,
She just started to send them to you out of the blue.
she didn't send them to me. She used to put them through the letterbox when the boys were out with Andrew.
Was there a note with them?
No.
How do you know they were from the accused, not from anybody else?
Well, I found her doing it once. I opened the door for the cat and she was there.
And what was the reaction of the accused when you opened the door?
She tried to thrust them into my hand. She said that they would help me to save money and that I ought to save money because the business was going badly.
The business, Mrs. Carline.
The witness's former husband owns 2 news agents, Your Honour.
Thank you, Mr. Crichton.
Did you say anything to Paula Carline when you opened the door?
Yes.
What did you say?
Oh, I don't remember my exact words, but I told her to go away. I asked her not to bring me any more.
And did she?
Well, she didn't ever try to hand them to me, but sometimes they used to come through the letterbox.
I see. And was this meeting on your doorstep the one previous to the one in the Van Ordinaire?
No.
And where did that meeting take place?
In Lodderier's.
Can you tell the court what Lodderier's is?
It's a shoe shop. In the high street, they specialize in Italian shoes.
And when did you and Mrs. Carline meet in Lodderier's shoe shop?
I can't remember the... I think it was the end of January, perhaps the first week in February, but I...
Did you say anything to the accused when you met?
Well, I smiled at her. I really didn't think there was anything to say, particularly after our last meeting.
Did the accused speak to you?
Sort of.
Did Mrs. Carline speak to you, or didn't she, Mrs. Carline?
Mr. Crichton, since we have 2 Mrs. Carlines in the case, I think it would assist the court if you could identify them using their Christian names. Felicity Carline and Paula Carline.
Of course, Your Honour. Mrs. Carline, did Paula Carline say anything when you met in Loderia's shoe shop?
Well, she didn't say anything to me.
Did she say anything to anybody else?
She said to the assistant, if this bitch can afford shoes like this, why am I paying her maintenance?
And then what happened?
She threw what she was holding onto the floor and she walked out.
And that was the last time you and the accused met before your meeting in the Van Ordinaire?
Yes.
Did the accused notice you when she entered the Van Ordinaire on the 17th of March?
I don't know. I didn't see her come in. The lady behind the counter had asked if I was having a party, and I was telling her what the party was for. I suppose I was being a bit of a boastful mother. She said her niece was very musical. I told her all about the scholarship, what it was worth. Then I realized there was a queue. I turned round, and it was Paula.
And what was your reaction on meeting the accused?
I said I was sorry because I'd kept her waiting. Nothing else. I've always believed in turning the other cheek. Then I went back to writing my cheque and I left. Well...
Did something happen to prevent you leaving the Van Ordinaire?
Yes.
Perhaps you would tell the court what happened to prevent you leaving the off-licence.
She threw a packet of peanuts at me. In my haste to avoid a confrontation, I'd left them on the counter. She threw them at me. I lost hold of everything. I tried to grab hold of everything, but then the shelves just came away from the walls. You'd think the health people would make sure that shops had their shelves fitted properly so they wouldn't come crashing down on people. Well, the next thing I remember, I was in excruciating pain. Everything was wet. I could feel something dripping down my face. I thought it was alcohol, but it was blood. I knew it was blood because it tasted salty.
And what was the reaction of the accused
She
to
just
this?
walked out of the shop.
After Paula Carline had left?
I don't know. I know somebody asked if I was all right, but I couldn't move. There was all this glass. I didn't like to move. And the pain and the blood, I thought I was going to die.
You must have been in great pain, Mrs. Carline.
Yes. Then the police came. They asked me a lot of questions. I don't know what I said, but I do remember I told them about Paula. I told them what had happened. And then an ambulance came and they put me in it.
And did the ambulance take you to the hospital?
Yes, they took me to the infirmary.
Do you remember what happened when you got there?
Well, they said that they would have to take the glass out of me. I needed an anesthetic. I've got glass in me, you see. You see,
Can the jury see? Perhaps you would like to cross the floor so that the jury can see.
It's horrible.
The jury would have a far better idea of your wounds if they could see them. Mrs. Carline.
Very well. I'm like this all over.
Will you return to the box, please?
Thank you, Mrs. Carline.
How long did you have to stay in the hospital, Mrs. Carline?
Just over 3 weeks.
It seems a long time for cuts.
I had to have surgery. My face.
Is your hospital treatment now finished?
I don't know. I would like something done to my hands to make them look better. It would have to be done privately. Whatever they do, I'm still going to look a mess. I have a problem lifting things, and I've lost the use and feeling in 2 of my fingers. It'll never come back.
Thank you, Mrs. Carline.
Your Honor, in view of Mrs. Carline's injuries, might she perhaps be permitted to sit down?
There is a seat behind you, Mrs. Carline.
Thank you, but without a cushion, it's easier to stand.
I'm sure a cushion could be found for you, Mrs. Carline.
It's easier to stand.
As you prefer. Mrs. Carline, what did you do with the coupons my client put through your letterbox?
I spent them.
And how much did you manage to save by redeeming these coupons?
Oh, quite a lot sometimes. Once it was nearly more than £2.
Really, that would seem to be quite a saving, one which many people would be glad to make. Why then did you consider Paula Carline's giving them to you to be an insult?
We're not paupers.
But these things were helping you to save money. Surely they were useful.
Yes, well, she thinks she's poor because of the maintenance I get. If she wants money saved, why doesn't she save it herself?
Is that what you told Paula Carline when you found her at your doorstep?
No, I told her to go away. I told her not to bring me any more.
Were those the words you used?
I've said I don't remember the words I used.
But the tenor of them was as you've said.
Yes, I told her to stop bothering me.
That's not a very pleasant remark to make to somebody who is trying to help you, is it, Mrs. Carline?
I didn't consider that she was trying to help me.
Then, at your next meeting at the Loderia shoe shop, you chose to ignore her.
I did not ignore her.
But you told the court, I didn't think there was anything to say.
Oh, that's true. I didn't have anything to say to her.
Wouldn't you have been upset if on meeting you, Paula Carline had ignored you?
Unfortunately, she doesn't ignore me. I wish she would. You've seen the results.
Yes, well, we'll come to that later. So, by the beginning of March, there was quite a lot of animosity between you and my client.
We weren't particularly friendly. I wouldn't call it animosity.
What would you call it? Or could you put into words the state of affairs as they existed between you and my client at the beginning of March?
I just couldn't trust her to behave well.
You expected her to behave badly?
I didn't say that. I couldn't expect her to behave well.
Isn't the opposite of behaving well behaving badly, Mrs. Carline?
She's behaved badly before.
And therefore you expected her to behave badly again?
She didn't behave badly in the off-license. She behaved appallingly.
That is for the prosecution to try and prove, Mrs. Carline. Let us now turn our attention to that meeting in the Van Ordinaire. Is the Van Ordinaire a large shop?
It's quite small.
What happens when you enter the shop?
I'm sorry.
I mean, is there a bell or anything to indicate to the shopkeeper that someone has just entered the shop?
Oh, yes, there's a bell, but it's not really necessary. You can see anybody that comes in.
Well, but you have just said that you didn't see my client enter the shop.
I did not see her come in.
But how can you explain your statement that you can see anybody that enters the shop?
If you're behind the counter, you can. I was facing the wrong way.
Did you know someone had entered the shop behind you?
Yes, well, I knew somebody had come in.
Yet you didn't glance round to see who it was?
Why should I have done?
Well, a curiosity, Mrs. Carline?
I was involved in conversation.
So, you didn't see my client had entered the shop until you had finished your conversation?
That's right.
And when you did see her?
Nothing. I finished writing my check.
Mrs. Carline, what did you do after you'd finished signing your check?
I picked everything up, except I forgot a packet of peanuts. God, I wish I hadn't.
Let's get ahead of ourselves. So, you picked up everything in your arms, or did you have a carrier?
In my arms. The Van Ordinaire's too mean to supply free carriers. And I don't see why I should pay for the privilege of advertising for them. I mean, I'd spent nearly £25.
So, you were carrying in your arms all you had bought, except for a packet of peanuts?
Yes.
Why didn't you pick the peanuts up?
I was in a hurry to get out of the shop.
Why were you in a hurry to get out of the shop?
I wanted to get home to my children.
You didn't want to get away from Paula Carline as fast as you could.
Well, I didn't want to stay in the shop any longer than necessary.
So you were in a hurry to avoid her?
My children were at home by themselves. I wanted to get home.
What did you do when you realized you had forgotten the peanuts?
Nothing. I didn't think it was worth the trouble of going back for.
What do you mean by trouble, Mrs. Carline?
Paula was standing at the counter.
But why did you expect trouble?
Because there's always trouble when we meet.
Mrs. Carline, you cannot construe the events on other occasions as being trouble.
They trouble me.
So, there was a split second in which you wondered whether or not to go back for the peanuts.
Yes.
In which you might have paused.
I might have done.
Indicating that you had forgotten something.
I don't know if I paused.
You've just told the court that you might have done.
Yes, well, only for a split second.
But enough to indicate that you had forgotten the nuts.
Well, I don't know. I could have stopped for any reason.
So you did stop?
I don't mean stopped, I mean paused.
So why might you have paused when leaving the Van Ordinaire?
Well, something on the shelves might have caught my eye.
But surely you would have examined the shelves while deciding what to buy.
Well, I might have done. I was probably looking to see where I was going.
Why did you have to look where you were going?
Well, one usually does if one doesn't want to trip over anything.
Were there obstacles in your path to the door?
Yes.
What obstacles were there between the counter and the door?
There was a large basket. It had legs that went out like that. Oh, it had all the remainder stock in it. And then there was a tiered basket thing. It had, it's so difficult to describe. It was full of crisps and things.
There was nothing else?
I don't think so, no.
There wasn't perhaps a window display or anything?
Oh, yes, yes. That's where the beer was. It was in sort of stacks, in separate pyramids. And then it had a rope around it, I suppose, to stop it from being stolen. The rope was like this, you know, like the kind they have in stately homes to stop people walking across the carpets.
Can you describe to the court the way in which the rope around the beer was anchored to the floor?
I'm sorry,
But the rope around the beer must have been supported in some way.
Oh, yes. It was on 2 stands. And then at the top of the stand there was a hole where the rope passed through.
And were these supports freestanding or fixed?
Well, they must have been freestanding because I knocked one over when I fell.
How close to the door was the support you knocked over as you fell?
Next to it.
So, next to the door was a freestanding support with a rope carried through the top of it.
Yes.
Mrs. Carline, will you now tell the court in your own words? Now, you have in your arms an identical collection of bottles to the ones which you purchased at the Van Ordinaire.
Yes.
It's quite a load, isn't it?
It's what I was carrying.
But you would admit that it's quite an armful.
Yeah, well, I was only carrying them to the car.
Mrs. Carline, please, answer the question. Are your arms full?
I suppose so.
And carrying such a burden, it must have been quite difficult to see where you were going.
Do you think I could put them down, please?
I have not made my point yet, Mrs. Carline.
Your Honour, we have already heard of the difficulty my client has had holding things since her accident. I think we can all now understand how much she was carrying. May she please put down her burden?
Unless you intend to start throwing packets of peanuts around, Mr. Fletcher Reed, which I can assure you I won't allow. I see no reason why Mrs. Carline should not be relieved of the bottles.
I have a very important point I should like to make first, Your Honour.
Then please make it as quickly as possible.
Mrs. Carline, can you see your feet?
I'm sorry.
Burdened as you are, can you see your feet?
No.
Thank you. Will you please relieve Mrs. Carline of her burden?
Thank you.
Will you return to the witness box, Mrs. Carline?
Mrs. Carline, it must have been difficult to negotiate your way from the counter to the door, burdened as you were.
Not really.
Didn't you have any trouble seeing where you were going?
No.
But you couldn't see your feet.
I could see in front of me, though.
You were watching where you were going.
Of course I was.
Then how do you account for the fact that one of the stands around the beer was knocked over?
That happened when I fell. I caught my foot in it.
So you caught your foot in one of the stands?
Yes.
Before the peanuts were thrown?
No.
I put it to you, Mrs. Carline, that in your haste to leave the shop, you were not looking where you were going.
No.
And that because you were not looking where you were going, you caught your foot in one of the supports, and that the resulting accident was caused by your own haste. A classic example, would you not say, of that old proverb, festina lente, more haste, less speed.
That is not true. I tripped because she threw a packet of peanuts at me.
At you, Mrs. Carline?
At me!
You don't think that perhaps my client noticed the peanuts which you had forgotten in your hurry and threw them to you so that you could take them with you?
She threw them at me.
Mrs. Carline, you say my client was standing at the counter which was behind you?
She was.
Do you have eyes in the back of your head?
No.
Then how could you possibly have seen whether she threw the peanuts to you or at you?
The shop has a glass-fronted door. I could see her reflection in it.
If you were so intent on watching Paula Carline's reflection in the glass of the door, then how could you possibly have been able to see where you were going? Well, Mrs. Carline? No further questions, Your Honour.
The case of the Queen against Carline will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. The case you're about to see is fictitious, but the procedure is authentic. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the general public. This is Felicity Carline. Paula Carline is accused of maliciously wounding her. Paula is married to Felicity's ex-husband.
Mrs. Carline, whereabouts were you in the shop when the nuts were thrown?
I was at the door.
You were at the door, not approaching it.
I was at the door. I had my hand free to open it.
And it was at that moment that Paula Carline threw the nuts?
Yes, she did.
Did she give you any indication at all she was going to throw them?
Yes. She shouted, "There."
You're quite sure she shouted there and not here?
Quite sure. She was throwing them at me. There was a lot of force behind them.
And you could see all this reflected in the glass door of the shop?
Yes.
What was your reaction to the nuts being thrown?
I tried to avoid them, but they hit me. My head.
Can you remember what happened when they hit you?
I lost my grip. I could feel the bottles falling. I tried to hold on to them, but I caught my foot.
You caught your foot as a result of the nuts being thrown?
I tripped, trying to not let go of the bottles.
But you lost hold of the bottles as a result of the nuts being thrown?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the court how much time elapsed from the moment you left the counter and the moment you fell?
A few seconds, not much more.
But time enough to separate the events?
Yes. I crossed the shop. I paused to open the door. She threw the nuts at me. Because she threw them, I tripped.
And the court has been made well aware of the results of that trip. Thank you, Mrs. Carline. I have no further questions, Your Honour. You are Eunice Gilbert?
Yes.
And you live above the Vin Ordinaire, off licence on Claremont Crescent?
You've got to now. I wouldn't risk having a lock-up the way things are going.
And were you working there on the night of the 17th of March this year?
Of course. I've had too many shop assistants to risk taking on another pilferer.
Did something happen in your shop on the night of the 17th?
Happen? I'm surprised I've got any of my shop left.
Yes, well, we'll come on to that in a
I
moment.
haven't got my insurance money yet.
Well, perhaps if we can bring this case to a speedy conclusion...
You can't wait, you know. You have to restock immediately. It looks very bad, having empty shelves.
If you could please just answer the question, Miss Gilbert.
I just thought you should know.
The case of whether or not your insurance company has paid up has no relevance to the outcome of this case, Miss Gilbert.
It has to me. I've taken half a day out to come here. I wouldn't have done that if I didn't think I was going to get my insurance in the end.
You will be given an expenses claim for the time you have given up, Miss Gilbert.
Oh, thank you.
Can you describe to the court the events that took place in your shop on the night in question?
Well, first of all, this boy came in. I thought he must be part of Rag Week, in fancy dress for the float. But they were his real clothes, he said, because I asked him. Then this lady from Silver Grove came in asking for a magnum of champagne. I don't keep them in the shop, so I had to go to the cellar for it. I don't like going to the cellar, not when there are people in the shop, because they might take something while I'm out. I tried to get her to have 2 bottles, but she wouldn't. There isn't much more expense, and that way you get 2 corks to let off, but she said she'd rather save the money and not have the second cork. She didn't look the sort to run off with anything, though I wasn't quite so sure about the boy. He did seem to be taking his time. When I came back, she'd got a whole lot of other things that she put on the counter. She said she was going to pay by cheque. And while she was writing her cheque, we got to talking about her lad's scholarship. Then that one came in.
The accused?
Yes.
So Paula Carline came in while you were talking?
Yes.
Did she recognise the woman you were talking to?
Recognise? I tell you, if looks could kill. At first I thought it's because she's been kept waiting. But when the other one turned round, well, as soon as they saw each other, I could tell there was going to be trouble.
How could you tell?
Just the way they looked at each other. I knew it was a fight over a man.
Did either of them say anything to the other?
No. The first one just picked up her stuff, making it perfectly obvious that she had nothing to say.
She didn't have a carrier bag?
She didn't want to pay the 5 pence, and I'm not a charitable organisation.
Did she leave anything on the counter?
She left some peanuts. She couldn't have carried them. You could see she wanted to get out of the door as fast as she could.
Did Felicity Carline have any difficulty reaching the door of the shop?
Why should she have done?
There was nothing obstructing her pathway to the door?
There isn't allowed to be. There are regulations.
So there was nothing obstructing my client's pathway to the door?
No. She just got to the door when that one picked up a packet of peanuts and threw them at her.
So Paula Carline picked up a packet of peanuts and threw them at Felicity Carline?
I'm surprised the other one wasn't knocked out cold.
Did Paula Carline say anything before she threw the nuts?
She shouted, "There!" Next thing I knew, all my shelves were being pulled down.
And after that?
She just put down the money for the sherry she'd got and walked out, straight over the one lying on the floor. She scratched my lino too, opening the door over all that broken glass.
Miss Gilbert, you say there are strict rules about what you can have where in your shop.
Yes,
Do you always obey these rules?
of course. They can check up on you whenever they like.
Is the layout of your shop static, or do you like to move it around?
I like to move it around every so often. It can get very dull having it always laid out the same way.
And tell me, is it easy to alter the layout?
Well, the baskets I have on wheels. The ropes you can just pick up and move round how you want. The shelves aren't so simple.
So the freestanding display units are easily movable?
They have to be for the cleaning. You wouldn't believe how dirty that floor gets.
After they've been moved for the cleaning, how are these units repositioned?
I'll put them back.
Are their positions marked?
No, I know where they have to go.
So you reposition them by eye?
I know exactly where they have to go.
How long is it since you last measured the position of these units?
Oh, not for ages.
Well, then surely they're moved as often as you say for the cleaning. There must be some doubt as to whether or not their positions are still accurate.
Well, they couldn't be more than a couple of inches out.
But a couple of inches is enough to cause an obstruction.
Not if you were looking where you were going.
But if you were not looking where you were going, you might trip.
It's not my fault if customers trip.
Miss Gilbert, I put it to you that it was the layout of your shop that caused Felicity Carline's unfortunate accident.
It was not. That one threw a packet of peanuts.
So you were watching Paula Carline's actions and not Felicity Carline's?
I saw the peanuts hit her and her trying to save herself.
Miss Gilbert, if the verdict in this case is not guilty and it is proven that Felicity Carline tripped when leaving the Van Ordinaire, it would be somewhat inconvenient for you, would it not?
As a result of a message received on your radio, Sergeant Avebury, did you go to the Van Ordinaire on the 17th of March?
Yes, sir.
And when you got there, what did you observe?
There had been a disturbance. A woman with multiple injuries was lying on the floor.
Could you tell the court the name of the woman?
Felicity Carline, sir.
And what was the first thing you did on entering the Van Ordinaire?
I called an ambulance, sir, and I made the lady as comfortable as possible.
Was she able to speak?
Yes, sir.
What did you say to her?
May I consult my notebook, sir?
When was it written out?
As soon as I return to the police station, sir.
Mr. Fletcher Reed.
I have no objection, Your Honour.
Very well. Sergeant Avebury.
I asked Felicity Carline what had happened, and as a result of that, I later spoke to Paula Carline of 3 Antimony Crescent, Fulchester.
Well, we'll come on to that in a minute, Sergeant. Was Felicity Carline in pain?
Yes, sir. She was in great pain.
And when the ambulance took her to the hospital, did you go with her?
No, sir. Constable Douglas, who had by this time arrived, went with her. I stayed behind in the off-licence to try and find out what had happened and to comfort Miss Gilbert. She was very distressed.
Quite understandably. Sergeant, what did you do after Felicity Carline had gone to the hospital?
I questioned Miss Gilbert. Fortunately, the Van Ordinaire have a policy of insisting that names and addresses are written on the back of cheques. Having verified Felicity Carline's named address, I went to her home to inform her family. There I found 2 children. They were very distressed at their mother having been gone so long. Fortunately, they phoned their grandmother, who arrived only minutes after I did. From her, I obtained the address of the children's father.
And then what did you do?
I went to the address I had been given to try and find Paula Carline. When I arrived there, Paula Carline opened the door. I immediately cautioned her, although she was very drunk.
Why did you form that impression?
Her eyes were glazed, her speech was slurred, and she was unsteady on her feet.
I see. And how long after you being called to the Van Ordinaire did this visit take place?
No more than an hour and a half, sir.
An hour and a half. Was Mr. Carline at home?
Yes, sir. He offered to drive me and his wife to the police station.
He knew about the incident?
I don't think so, sir. He said he didn't want a police car outside his house.
And what happened when you got to the police station?
I let Paula Carline sober up for a couple of hours. I then cautioned her again.
Did she make a statement?
No, sir. She refused to say anything at all to the police.
Thank you, Sergeant Avebury. I have no further questions, Your Honour.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Mrs. Paula Carline?
Yes.
And you live at 3 Antimony Crescent, Fulchester?
Yes, I do.
Are you employed, Mrs. Carline?
I'm deputy head of the chemistry department at Fulchester Comprehensive.
And your husband runs a chain of newsagent shops in Fulchester?
2 shops. It's hardly a chain.
Are these businesses successful?
Not very. Not at the moment. Well, nothing is successful in a country whose economy is going down the drain.
Well, the court will understand that your husband's business has been hit by the recession, but surely you and your husband must have quite a reasonable income from these shops.
We used to. Not anymore. Now everything Andrew gets has to go to pay the maintenance for his first wife.
Are you telling the court that the entire income from your husband's business goes to support his first wife?
After tax, yes.
And so you and your husband are dependent on your income?
Yes. I pay the mortgage and all the bills.
Have you a large mortgage?
It's quite large. Andrew wanted to be near his children. That's why I bought a house where I did, to make it easy for him to see them as often as possible.
So you are keen to preserve good contacts between your husband and his sons?
Yes. I could have been running my own chemistry department by now, but that would have meant us moving. I thought that would be unfair on him and the children.
How would you describe your relationship with the first Mrs. Carline?
I've always found her difficult.
Difficult?
I find her cold. She's not a very spontaneous person.
When did you first meet her?
Just before Andrew and I got married.
And how did she behave towards you on this occasion?
She observed the minimum standards of civility. She regards me as the other woman.
Were you the other woman?
Oh, no. They'd separated before I even met Andrew. I didn't split them up.
Why did you stop going to Felicity Carline's house?
It was such an effort. I could always feel her hostility towards me. I only went in the first place because Andrew wanted me to go. I wanted all 3 of us to be friends. Felicity didn't see it that way.
So things have never been easy between you two?
No. But I did try.
Did you put coupons through Felicity Carline's letterbox?
Yes.
Why?
I thought they'd be useful to her. I've seen the way the boys eat when they come to my house.
And this was your motive for giving her these things?
I wanted to help her.
You were not aware that Felicity Carline objected to you giving her these things?
I am now. I don't understand her complaint, though. She spent them. She got the money for them. I could have used them myself.
Felicity Carline never asked you to stop sending them to her.
She told me to go away once. I thought she was angry about me, not the coupons.
So you were not aware that she wanted you to stop sending them to her?
No.
Would you have stopped if you'd known?
Of course. I'd have used them myself.
Where did you get the coupons from?
I cut them out of old stock, which hadn't sold, and magazines that Andrew had over-ordered or people had forgotten to collect. He leaves them in a pile so that the staff can take whatever they want.
Are you on your husband's staff, Mrs. Carline?
Part-time staff are very expensive. I help out whenever I can.
Does your husband pay you?
No, he couldn't afford to.
So, in effect, Mrs. Carline, you have 2 jobs?
Yes. But Andrew's maintenance is very high. He needs to make as much from his shops as he can.
Do you feel bitter about the fact that you have so little free time when Felicity Carline doesn't work at all?
Sometimes. I think all second wives in my position do. I do realise she has children to look after, though.
Could you tell the court what had happened to you on the day of that meeting in the Loderia shoe shop?
That day,
The court does realise that some of the questions put to you may be painful, Mrs. Carline.
I've tried to forget as much of that day as possible.
Nevertheless, you recollect some details of it.
Yes. It was the day I
found out I wasn't pregnant.
You had been thinking that you were.
I'd been sure I was. I went to get the results of my pregnancy test, and it was negative. It was a terrible shock. I'd been waiting for so long, and women get to the point when they run out of time. Anyway, I was terribly upset, but through my mind all the time was going the thought, how could I possibly afford a baby with the way things were? I didn't see how Andrew and I could survive financially if I had to give up my job. I suppose we would have done. We haven't had the chance to find out.
What did you do after you discovered that you were not pregnant?
I was desperate for a shoulder to cry on. I went to see my friend.
Was she helpful?
She poured a lot of gin into me.
Do you usually drink, Mrs. Carline?
Hardly at all. I don't like the taste much, but Sylvia said
Sylvia.
My client's friend, Your Honour.
Sylvia said a stiff drink was what I needed.
Can you remember how much you had to drink?
Enough to make me pretty light-headed.
And what happened after that?
Sylvia said that the best thing to do would be to buy something I wouldn't have been able to afford if I had a baby. I needed a new pair of shoes. Loderia's sale was on. I wanted to be extravagant without being too extravagant. So I went in to see if I could find a nice pair of shoes. Felicity was in the shoe shop.
Did she say anything to you?
No. I wish she had. I needed someone to talk to, anyone.
But she ignored you?
Yes.
Felicity Carline says you threw down a shoe in Loderia's.
No.
Well, will you tell the court what you did do with the shoe?
I was looking at it.
Yes.
It was a shoe that ought to have been a baby. I just let go.
Just let go?
Dropped it.
Did you say anything to Felicity Carline?
She says I did.
Well, can you remember saying anything to her?
Well, I said something. I suppose it was something about money. That's what was going on in my head. Well, one of the things, I had had more to drink than I ought.
Why had you been drinking?
I was dreadfully upset.
Turning to the events of the 17th of March, did you go anywhere that evening?
Yes, I went to the Vin Ordinaire.
Was there someone there that you knew?
Yes, Felicity was in there talking to the shopkeeper.
Did Felicity Carline see you when you entered the shop?
Yes, she did.
You're quite sure she saw you when you entered the shop?
Yes. Then she turned around and went on with her conversation.
Could you hear what was being said in this conversation?
Oh, yes. It's a small shop, and I'm sure she meant me to hear.
Will you tell the court what this conversation was about?
It was about Joseph, my eldest stepson, about a music scholarship that he'd won to public school. She was talking about the party they were going to have to celebrate.
Then what happened?
Well, she obviously decided she'd kept me waiting long enough, so she picked everything up, except a packet of peanuts.
Then what did she do?
Flounced towards the door.
Were there any obstacles between the counter and the door?
Yes. Well, Felicity's right. The layout of the shop's atrocious. We'd never have been allowed to get away with it in one of Andrew's shops. It was an obstacle course.
Well, will you describe to the court the nature of this obstacle course?
Well, there certainly wasn't a straight line between the counter and the door. There were several basket things on wheels with bottles of wine in them, and there was a big pile of stacking baskets with every sort of flavoured crisp. And right by the door, on the side that you open it, there was a sort of rope barrier thing. I noticed it because I nearly caught my foot in it when I entered the shop.
So you realised that the layout of the shop was dangerous?
Well, it was navigable with extreme caution.
But if you had not been looking where you were going, it would have been a hazard.
Most certainly.
Did Felicity Carline go straight to the door?
Well, she couldn't go straight to the door because of all the things in the way.
I'm sorry, I'll phrase the question better. Did Felicity Carline make her way to the door without any hesitation?
About halfway to the door, she paused. Well, I realised it was because she'd forgotten the peanuts. Well, I know the boys like peanuts.
I knew they'd be disappointed if she didn't take them home with her. I thought she'd want them as part of the celebration, so I picked them up so I could throw them to her so she could take them with her.
So you picked up the nuts in order to throw them to Felicity Carline?
Yes.
Did you think that she'd be able to catch them?
Well, she had her right arm free, and my throwing's pretty accurate. She ought to have been able to catch them.
Did you warn her that you were about to throw them?
She could see me in the door.
Yes?
Well, I did shout here, so she'd turn to catch them, but just as I threw them, she caught her foot and she fell.
So as you threw the nuts, she caught her foot?
Yes. She tripped on the stand. I'd nearly caught my foot in when I came in.
You threw the packet of nuts after she lost her footing?
Yes. No, it all happened in the same split second.
So the peanuts left your hand at exactly the same second as Felicity Carline tripped?
At exactly the same time. Yes.
Mrs. Carline, why did you go on giving grocery coupons to Felicity Carline when she'd asked you not to?
She asked me to go away. She didn't ask me not to take the coupons.
Wasn't it obvious what she meant by asking you to go away?
It is now. It wasn't at the time.
Let us now re-examine what you said and did in the Loderia shoe shop.
Yes?
You say that you can't remember exactly what you said that day.
It's a long time ago. I had other things on my mind.
So you didn't say, if this bitch can afford expensive shoes like this, why am I paying her maintenance?
I don't know how she remembers so well after all this time.
So you admit you said it?
I might have done. Is what I would call her. It's a stupid word, but I don't know another word which says what I really want to say about her.
So you admit calling her a bitch?
I admit I might have done. I don't remember what I said. I had a drink, several drinks. I had other things on my mind.
But you remember throwing a shoe onto the floor?
I heard it fall on the floor. I must have dropped it. If I'd thrown it, I'd have been expecting a noise, wouldn't I?
Well, that's for you to say, Mrs. Carline. Shall we move on to the 17th of March? When you entered the off-licence, Felicity Carline was involved in conversation.
Yes.
She did not notice you enter the shop?
Yes, she did.
How do you know what Felicity Carline did see and did not see?
I'm sure she knew I was there. She must have done.
Felicity Carline and Miss Gilbert are sure that she did not see.
Eunice Gilbert saw me go in.
Eunice Gilbert was facing the door. Felicity Carline had her back to it, did she not?
She knew I was there.
Can you tell the court what the conversation that Felicity Carline and the shopkeeper was having was about?
It was about Joseph, my eldest stepson, about him winning a music scholarship to a public school.
And was this information new to you?
No, my stepson had told me himself.
What had been your reaction?
I told him I thought it was wonderful.
Did you think it was wonderful?
About the music scholarship, yes. He'd worked hard for it. Not many children have the dedication to practice every day. I didn't think much to the private school bit of it, but you've got to tell a few lies to make the world go round.
Just as you have told a few lies to make this court come round to your story.
That isn't true.
We'll sort out the fact from the fiction later, Mrs. Carline.
The case of the Crown versus Carline will be concluded tomorrow in the Crown Court. The case you're about to see is fictitious, but the procedure is authentic. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the general public. This is Paula Carline. She's accused of maliciously wounding her husband's former wife, Felicity Carline.
Why didn't you feel wonderful about your stepson getting into public school?
It was obvious where the money was going to have to come from.
But your stepson had won a scholarship.
Only for his music lessons, not for his other tuition or his board.
So you objected to your stepson's scholarship because of what you thought it would cost?
That was one reason.
There were other reasons?
Yes.
What were the other reasons?
I teach in a comprehensive school. That's the system of education I believe in. You can hardly blame me for not being enthusiastic about private education.
So you disliked the conversation that you overheard between Felicity Carline and the shopkeeper?
I disliked her glorification of the system.
And the conversation you overheard angered you?
Not really.
Is the court to believe that you listened to a conversation that was totally against your principles and it didn't anger you?
I didn't like the conversation. It didn't make me very angry.
It didn't make you very angry?
It didn't make me angry at all.
Then you can hardly be so fervent in your upholding of the comprehensive system as you'd have us believe, can you, Mrs. Carline?
That isn't true at all.
You're getting angry now, Mrs. Carline, in defence of your principles, are you not?
No, I'm not.
Are you sure, Mrs. Carline? What happened after Felicity Carline and the shopkeeper had finished her conversation?
She finished writing her cheque and she grabbed everything except the peanuts and stormed out.
But the complainant never left the shop, surely?
She went off towards the door.
What size was the packet of peanuts left on the counter?
Do you mean the size or the weight?
The weight, Mrs. Carline.
About 500 grams.
So it must have been quite a large packet.
Yes.
Your Honour, could the court be told the British weight?
By British weight, I presume you mean pounds and ounces, Mr. Fletcher.
Of course, Your Honour.
Isn't it just over a pound?
It's 1 pound, 1.632 ounces.
Good Lord.
I am obliged, Mrs. Carline.
There's a lot of maths involved in teaching chemistry.
So, the size of the packet of peanuts left on the counter was the same as just over a pound of sugar.
Same weight, not the same size. It's the same argument about the pound of feathers and the pound of lead.
Thank you, Mrs. Carline. The court is most grateful for your clarification. Did you pick up this packet of peanuts?
Yes, she'd left them behind.
What did you do after you picked up the packet of peanuts?
I wondered whether to throw them to her or not.
Why did you wonder?
Her arms were full. She was carrying a lot.
So you did realise that Felicity Carline was carrying too much to be able to catch the peanuts?
At first she was, but then she had her arm free so she could open the door. I thought that was the ideal moment.
Did you give Mrs. Carline any indication you were about to throw the nuts?
I shouted here to let her know.
Did you shout before or after you threw the nuts?
Before, of course. What would have been the point after I'd thrown them?
So you warned Felicity Carline you were about to throw the nuts, and then what?
But just as I threw them, she tripped.
Why did she trip?
The shop was an obstacle course. There was something in the way.
Mrs. Carline, I suggest she tripped because you threw a packet of peanuts at her which hit her.
I was throwing them to her. She wasn't looking where she was going, and that's why she tripped. Then, because I was in the shop, she leapt to the wrong conclusion. She decided that I'd thrown the peanuts at her when I'd thrown them to her.
Could you see Felicity Carline's feet by the door?
Yes, she could see me in the door. I could see her by the door.
So there was nothing obscuring your line of vision to the door?
Well, there was a basket thing on wheels. I could see through the legs of that.
So you were looking at Felicity Carline's feet and not where you were throwing the nuts?
The brain is a wonderful instrument. It can take in any number of pieces of information all at once.
Can it also convince you that things happened in an order different from the one in which they actually happened?
She tripped before I threw the nuts.
If Felicity Carline tripped before you threw the nuts, how could you possibly have expected her to catch them? I repeat the question. If Felicity
Everything
Carline
happened
fell...
in a split second. I threw the nuts in the same split second that she tripped and had her accident.
You knew Felicity Carline was overladen, and yet you chose to throw the nuts rather than give them to her.
Yes.
Why couldn't you just have given them to her, Mrs. Carline?
She'd have ignored me.
Isn't that rather a supposition on your part?
She wouldn't take the coupons from me when I tried to give them to her. I knew the way she felt about me. I knew she wouldn't take them from me.
So you threw them?
Yes.
You must have thrown them with considerable velocity.
Well, I don't know how fast I threw them.
Well, over a distance of 10 feet, that's irrelevant, except to say they must have impacted with considerable force. Am I not right?
Yes.
Causing Felicity Carline to lose her footing.
That isn't what happened.
I put it to you that you did indeed intend some harm to Felicity, though nothing like the harm she actually suffered.
I didn't.
I'd suggest, moreover, that you are now ashamed and frightened by the actual results of your actions.
It isn't true at all. I threw them to her because I wanted her to take them with her.
What did you do after Felicity Carline had fallen?
I went outside. I had to get out.
To run away from what you had done?
I knew I was going to be sick.
Why were you going to be sick?
There was blood everywhere. It was horrible.
Were you sick?
Yes, several times.
And then you went home?
Yes.
You didn't go back into the shop to see if there was anything you could do to help?
There'd been an accident. It was nothing to do with me.
You knew the woman who was injured?
I'd been sick all down my dress. I had to go home.
And when you got home?
I got changed.
And then?
I had a drink.
The sherry you bought in the Vin Ordinaire?
No, I'd left that behind. I had whiskey. I had it neat. It was all there was in the house. I had to have something.
What happened when the police officer arrived at your house?
I thought someone had died or something.
Mrs. Carline, you are a keen cricketer, are you not?
Yes.
What position do you usually play?
Third man. I mean, woman.
Does this position require accurate throwing?
Mr. Fletcher Reed, could you please explain to the court the term third man?
Your Honour, he is a fielder on the boundary. It's vital that he, or in this case, she, throws as accurately as possible to prevent extra runs being scored.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher Reed.
How good is your aim, Mrs. Carline?
Well, it's pretty good.
And when you threw the nuts so that Felicity Carline could catch them, were they accurately aimed?
Yes.
Felicity Carline says that the nuts struck her on the head. How do you account for that?
Well, she fell just as I threw the nuts. The packet must have hit her as she was falling.
As she was falling, Mrs. Carline?
Yes. She must have fallen across the path of the nuts just as they reached her.
Did you see the packet hit Felicity Carline?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
I was looking at her feet.
You say you almost tripped over a stand as you entered the Vin Ordinaire.
Yes, I only saw it just in time.
And what was your opinion of the layout of the Vin Ordinaire on the night in question?
I don't know how they got away with it. We'd never be allowed to one of Andrew's shops.
Got away with what, Mrs. Carline?
The layout of the shop as it was on the 17th of March.
Are there severe penalties for disregarding the rules about layout?
It has to be safe. If it was proved that your own negligence in setting out the shop had caused someone's injury, well, you could find yourself facing huge claims for damages.
So if you had fallen as you entered the Vin Ordinaire and had been injured, you could have claimed for damages?
Yes.
And the same would apply to anyone else injured in the shop?
Most certainly.
And where would the money for these damages come from?
Well, there'd be insurance, of course, but if the shopkeeper had been negligent, well, it could bankrupt a small shop.
Like the Vin Ordinaire?
Yes.
Mrs. Carline, after you left the Vin Ordinaire, you went home?
After a bit. I was very sick first.
But you did go home without offering to help Felicity Carline?
The sight of blood always makes me sick. I thought I'd better go home. There was enough chaos without my fainting or something.
You've been sick on your dress?
Yes. The dress is ruined. The cleaners couldn't get the stains off.
And at home you had a stiff drink?
Yes, I felt faint. Terribly faint. I've always been like that about blood.
Why, Mrs. Carline?
I saw my mother die of a hemorrhage when I was 15.
I have no further questions, Your Honour. You are Matthew Woodman of 11 Pottery Terrace, Fulchester?
Yeah.
Are you working, Mr. Woodman?
Mr. Woodman, everyone calls me Matt.
Not in a court of law, Mr. Woodman.
Oh.
Are you working?
What do you think?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you the question.
No, I'm not working.
Did you, on the 17th of March this year, visit the Vin Ordinaire? It's an off-licence on Claremont Crescent in Fulchester.
Yeah.
And while you were in the Vin Ordinaire, did someone come in who you knew?
This lady came in.
Which lady?
The one who's married to the bloke I do my paper round for.
So you recognise the woman who entered the shop?
Yeah, she didn't recognise me, though.
Did you know the name of the woman who came in?
No.
You didn't know her name even though you'd worked for her husband?
Former husband, if you please, Mr. Fletcher-Reed.
I'm sorry, Your Honour. You didn't know her name even though you'd worked for her former husband?
Yeah, I remember what we called her now. Fliss the Priss. Prissy. You know, Mrs. Carline.
Did she recognise you?
She never knew who I was.
Did anyone else come into the shop while you were trying to make up your mind which beverage to buy?
Yeah, Miss Vincent. That one. That's Miss Vincent. Well, she used to be anyway.
And how do you know Miss Vincent, who is now Mrs. Carline?
I was in her form at school. She was great. I got a CSE in chemistry because I used to like her classes. She made them really interesting.
Did Mrs. Carline say anything to you? Well?
Sorry, miss, I've got in a muddle. I don't know which one he's talking
Mr.
about.
Fletcher-Reed, I think that it would help all of us if you could make it clear to which Mrs. Carline you are referring.
Tom.
Yes, yes. Did Mrs. Paula Carline, the former Miss Vincent, say anything to you when she entered the shop?
No, she didn't hardly look at me. I was going to ask her, since it was my birthday at the time, if she fancied a drink. And I thought she might say something about, you know, the hair.
Yes. So, Mrs. Paula Carline hardly looked at you, then what did she do?
Well, she got a bottle of sherry off the shelf. I didn't know how she could, not sherry. Well, then she went to pay for it, and the other one, Felicity, right?
Yes.
Well, she just looks at her, like, really spiteful, like this. Right? Well, then she went to the door and she left her nuts on the table.
Who left them?
The Felicity one. And then Paula, she picks them up and she shouts, "Here!" But Felicity, she took no notice, and right at that moment, she tripped over this stand thing, which was right by me. And at the same moment, Paula lobbed the nuts for her to catch.
Right at the same moment?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was just like in the films. It made a really good film, actually, especially in slow motion. Well, the next thing is blood and glass and everything everywhere, and she's lying on the floor and there's blood pouring out of her head. It was amazing. It was just like something on the TV. It was really amazing.
Would you like to sit down, Mr. Woodman?
No, thanks all the same. Well, as I was saying, it was really amazing. It made me feel a bit sick. It made Paula feel sick and all. You should have seen her. She was sick as a dog, all down herself.
You saw Paula Carline being sick?
Yeah. I'd never seen a lady being sick in the street before.
Mr. Woodman, we have heard your eloquent description of what happened in the Vin Ordinaire on the 17th of March, but there are a few points that I should like to clarify for the court. You say that you heard Paula Carline shout, "Here," before she threw the nuts.
Yeah.
You're quite sure that's what you heard?
What else would she have said? She always said what she meant. That's why she was so good at school. You always knew where you were with her.
You aren't perhaps only thinking she shouted "here" because your sympathies lie with her.
Look, she was the only teacher I ever liked at school. Look, she wouldn't do what you said she's done. She just wouldn't do it. She never even threw board rubbers.
Are you sure that your CSE in chemistry does not prejudice you in her favour?
Why should I be prejudiced? What's the point of a CSE, eh?
Members of the jury, you are here to decide whether Paula Carline is innocent or guilty of maliciously wounding Felicity Carline. Malice is defined as active ill will or hatred. There are 4 points to consider in deciding whether Paula Carline threw the packet of peanuts at Felicity Carline out of malice. First, did she shout "here," as one would when expecting someone to catch something, or "there," as one would before throwing an object in anger? Secondly, could Paula Carline seriously have expected Felicity Carline to catch the nuts? Surely it was obvious to her that it was impossible to catch them, however accurately they may have been thrown, and that an accident would very likely result. Thirdly, if Paula Carline threw the packet of peanuts at Felicity Carline out of sheer kindness, as she said she did, would she then walk straight out of the shop without attempting to help Felicity? Even if she was sick outside, wouldn't she have come back to see if there was anything she could do to help? Finally, is Matthew Woodman's evidence reliable? We heard him say it was just like watching something on the television. I would put it to you that in his rerun of events for this court, he may have made things more dramatic and simultaneous than they were. Members of the jury, after the evidence you have heard, can you have any other conclusion than that Paula Carline threw the packet of peanuts at Felicity Carline out of malice, and the accident was the result of her actions? If this is your conclusion, then you can return no other verdict but guilty. Your Honour.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you were perhaps, as children, brought up to believe in wicked stepmothers, but you have in front of you today a stepmother who contradicts that myth. A woman who bought a house in order that her husband should be near his children. A woman who was more concerned for the emotional welfare of her stepchildren than for her own convenience. I ask you, is it likely that she would assault their mother, knowing the distress that this would cause to her stepchildren? Counsel for the prosecution has pointed out that Paula Carline left the Van Ordinaire without stopping to assist Felicity Carline. But would Paula Carline's being sick or fainting have only added to her distress? Wasn't my client's action the most appropriate one that she could have taken in the circumstances? She admits to throwing a packet of peanuts, but surely, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you cannot accept that she threw them with malice. If Paula Carline threw the packet of peanuts with malice, would she have left the shop in such a state of shock? I think you will all appreciate how upset my client was on the occasion of their meeting in the Loderia shoe shop. She had just found out that she was not expecting a longed-for baby, and I therefore venture to suggest that those events are in no way connected with the events before or after. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I put it to you that, taking in consideration the evidence that has been placed before you in this court, your verdict can only be not guilty. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have been listening over the last few days to a case which is full of emotional overtones. It is now your duty to pass judgment on Paula Carline, not on any emotional grounds, but on the evidence as it has been presented to you in this court. That Paula Carline entered the Van Ordinaire on March the 17th is not disputed, nor is the fact that Felicity Carline sustained serious and terrible injuries, nor is the fact that Paula Carline threw a packet of peanuts. What is in dispute is the connection between the throwing of the peanuts and the accident which occurred. Felicity Carline and Eunice Gilbert have stated that the accident happened as a result of the nuts being thrown. Paula Carline and Matthew Woodman insist that Felicity Carline tripped before the peanuts were thrown. As the judges in this case, it is your duty to decide with whose evidence you agree. If you are certain that Paula Carline threw the nuts with malice and that Felicity Carline's injuries happened as a result of this action, then your verdict must be guilty. If you are uncertain on these 2 points, or indeed if you agree that Felicity Carline tripped before the nuts were thrown, then her injuries are indeed the result of an unfortunate accident. And you must find Paula Carline not guilty. Will you now retire and consider your verdict?
All stand. The defendant will stand. Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Have we reached a verdict upon which you are all agreed?
We have.
Do you find the defendant, Paula Carline, guilty or not guilty of the charge of maliciously wounding Felicity Carline?
Guilty.
Is this the verdict of you all?
It is.
Paula Carline was placed on probation for a period of 2 years. Felicity Carline is to bring a case of damages against her in the civil court.